Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Jordan Waters. I'm Chief of Staff to the Lieutenant Governor. Lieutenant Governor and Representative Moon are still on the floor of their respective houses, so we're going to get started. And we have, first up today, Controller Brandon Woolf, and he's going to give us an overview of Transparent Idaho and what that is, and also dealing with some of the CARES money. I think he's going to use that as some of his examples, because I know this group cares about that. So we're going to get started, and welcome, Controller Woolf.
Thanks, Jordan. Oh, wow, what a great crowd. Great to see you here today, and a special thank you to the Lieutenant Governor and I believe Representative Moon that are the brains behind this or organized this, so I appreciate that. So I'm Brandon Woolf. I've been the State Controller now for a little over 8 years, and I've been at the office since middle of 1997. I started as an intern there, and I've had different opportunities throughout the office. So I grew up down on a dairy farm in southeast Idaho. If you've seen the movie Napoleon Dynamite, I grew up in Preston, and I don't know if I drank as much of the milk that they did like on the FFA guys, but I learned the value of hard work growing up there on the farm from my grandpa and from my parents, and I appreciate that and carry that through to today. I appreciate the invitation just to share with you some of my passion and my vision and direction for the transparency. When I became a state controller, one of the very first things I said to my staff is I want to build that transparency website. And so our first transparency website went live, well, it was January of 2013. So we've had it live now for 8 years. And the website is transparent.idaho.gov. But our initial one was a PDFs, very static data. It was hard to search and go through and such. So with all that, over the years, about 2 or 3 years ago, we said there's got to be some better opportunities here to slice and dice and get to the data. And so with all that, we created a brand new, refreshed, updated website. And so I'll show you just a little bit here later on. And Jordan, I'll have you give me a time check, make sure I'm staying on, and I'm sure the Lieutenant Governor will gavel me down if I need to get off here. So let me just share with you. Again, here's the website, transparent.idaho.gov, and the homepage there. But let me just share briefly with you the why. And taking into effect these 5 items here. 1, the restoration of public trust. Instigate a cultural change, a deterrence of fraud, increase accountability, and then help with that data-driven decision-making. So those were kind of the 5 reasons of why we went forward of building that transparency website. Let me dive into these a little bit more. So as transparency is still a buzzword, it was a buzzword 8 years ago, 10 years ago, it's still a buzzword today, right? So you're going to say, well, is it a new concept? As you can read here, and I'll read this quote with you here. I used to have it memorized, and then I'm getting older and forget things. So we might hope to see the finances of the union as clear and as intelligible as a merchant's books, so that every member of Congress and every man of any mind in the union should be able to comprehend them and to investigate abuses and consequently control them. So who was that and how long ago? It was Thomas Jefferson in 1802. So it's not something. Did you have that? Did you know who that was? So here's my favorite chart, and this is what instigated all of it. And I know that's somewhat hard to read, but what it says, this is from the Pew Research Center, and it says, public trust in federal government remains at an all-time low. So as I can show through this screen here, this chart, it starts in 1958 here on the left, and then it starts about 70%. It goes up to 77, and then as you can see, the little spikes up and down throughout the years of the trust in federal government. I think we all can shake our heads in agreement, right? The last data point that they had was in 2019, it was at 17%. And being the state controller from our standpoint is saying, how can we help? What can we do in our part to help build that trust back? Try to say that as a public servant, how can we help build, as this incredible audience here, the citizens, how do you build that trust back in government? And it's by having as several of the quotes saying that sunshine is the best of disinfectants, and to shine that spotlight or that flashlight into every corner of government to help shine and put that out. So this was the actual graph that helped instigate or bring that forward. As I shared with you, it's shining that light. People want to know, they need to know, and they have a right to know how their government impacts them. So my part as dialogue is to help create that dialogue amongst the citizens. My part is to help set that out there, let that policy making take place. Continue to educate the public. A lot of citizens had no idea that this transparency website even exists. And so it's just helping to continue to bring that out. You know, it's our part to hold public officials accountable. Just because someone was elected at the ballot box doesn't end there. And I think that's your part of being here today, is to continue to hold myself and all others, hold those public officials accountable for their actions and their choices and decisions. This allows you to be able to do that. I've already hit on the shine that brighter light. One of the examples, though, that I want to share, you think back of maybe you were in middle school and you went to shop class and you had a hammer and you were learning things. And transparency, though, is a tool. And just like a hammer can be used for something good, you can go build humanity, build houses in third world countries and help use that for good, or build a home here, or whatever it may be. But a tool can also be used for something wrong. You could use that hammer to knock and break windows. So our part was not meant to be a gotcha. This site wasn't used for that. It's just, again, to put the information out so that that public policy discussion can take place. And the example I use, I have moms watching. And you'll remember this. Of all the things you remember today, you'll remember this one. You can tell that I like to eat my cookies, right? And I'm trying to, Crumble has my favorite, and I keep my wife watching to make sure my favorite cookie comes up. But when I growing up there on the farm, I could be anywhere, and my mom, since she's a wolf, she could hear, and she has great ears, and she could hear. Well, she could be anywhere out on the farm, and if I was in the kitchen trying to sneak into that cookie jar and opening that lid, she could hear me, and she knew that I was trying to sneak into those cookies. That same thing applies with this, right? If Mom's Watching is a government agency going to spend that money, Mom's Watching. And I think those are the situations where we've seen the times where these state employees now, because that's what's on here, this is state agency data at this point, they may be less apprehensive, like, do we need to go to that conference? Do we need to buy that? Do we need to purchase that? Should we do that contract? Because that's now out on Transparent Idaho and it's easier to watch. And 1.7 million Idahoans are helping watch that information now. So remember, Mom's watching. So let me just go through, and I want to just do a quick demonstration and show you how many of you have gone to the website? Raise of hand. So there's a couple of you. Great. So this is and I know it may be difficult from your screens or where you're sitting, but if you can take the wow factor of what you'll see, and I'll try to describe it to help understand what we're doing here. This is the homepage for Transparent Idaho. As I hover over, this is reports. These are pre-built reports that are already existing. There's payroll reports, personnel, a lot of financial, budget, various things there. We have showcases, and showcases are what we refer to as, like, you can put a story behind the data or the element. So in the case of, it's one thing to just have the data, but it's having the context behind it. And maybe I'm going to share this story real quick here before. There was a public official back in the Midwest that was caught purchasing clothing from a store called Victoria's Secret. Okay? So a reporter was wanting to find out, well, did this public official purchase other material and others? And are there other state employees purchasing and doing something like that? Well, this journalist found this information, found that there were some other payments made to Victoria's Secret from the state. Well, as they dug into it a little bit more, they found out that, sure enough, it was a payment to Victoria's Secret. But what it was, Victoria's Secret owned the highway billboard on the highway, and another state agency was putting some type of advertisement on the billboard. It's the context behind the data. And again, it's not to be that gotcha, but if we can fully flesh it out, verify it, and confirm that, then that's the value of that. So that's what these showcases allow you to be able to see, understand, and put some more context behind the data. We give some insight into public records requests. We receive tons and tons of public requests, especially during this time of year. How to do searches. And this Idaho Rebounds here is a lot of what drives into the Idaho Cares, or the CARES Act funding. The main titles here, we have these 6 titles, but let me just share the focus. A lot of time you're used to going on, you're searching something, what do? You use that Google, right? Or Bing, or whatever your search engine of choice. We really wanted to help the end user by being able to search something quickly. So on this drop down, there are 4 selections here on this search capability. I'm going to leave it at state workforce, because as we've done our Google Analytics, 98% of all searches are looking up some state employee. So let me type, and I'm going to type in here, fish. When I type in the word F-I-S-H, well, first of all, it's going to find 3 things. First, it found an agency, Fish and Game Department. If I clicked on that, it'll pull open all 800 and whatever employees they have that are active as of last night. It also has any state employee or former state employee that has F-I-S-H in their first or last name. And then down here at the bottom, if I get to it, it also has state class jobs that have fish in it. So like a fish biologist, a Fish and Game Bureau chief. Again, so you can do all of your search, and all I typed was fish. But I'm just giving you an example there. So I can come back here, let's get to the top. Let's type in. And in this case, it says there's 689 active employees as of last night. And again, that fluctuates for Fish and Game because of the seasonal employment they have. But right here is all 689 employees. So let's say, for example, most state employees are paid hourly. There's a few that are salaried. Let's say we want to do this in descending order. And again, there you go. So we put the highest paid, and there's the director. So just that quick and easy you can do. We also have where the employees work. Again, working for the state or public, that's part of working for, and your information is public information. What we spent a lot of time on, though, is making sure that we didn't put PII, personal identifiable information. So we spent a lot of time, this is what is allowable by statute, and we didn't put anything more. And those are things we had to go through and clarify. That's on the payroll personnel side. When you get to actual payments, the same thing applies. You can't put, did Dustin get a tax return? We can't put or show that because that's not public information. Or something with, say, ISP, alcohol beverage control. They use teenagers to go into convenience stores to do checks. They're underage, so we don't put their information. They're juvenile. So, but just to give you the power of how quickly it is to search and to slice and dice that data that's there. Let me close that out. Let me give you another example. That was doing the state workforce. Vendor payments. These are for any payments, so all state expenditures flow through our office. Roughly, this year it's north of $9 billion. CARES money aside, it's normally, when you take in federal, state general fund, dedicated fund, it's around a little over $9 billion. These are the payments or the expenditures. All the state agencies, the 90 state agencies, send their data to us on a daily basis. We cut a check or make a payment to that entity. So what this is all of those payments. I'm going to type in, for example, here, Delta. And in this case, I get Delta Airlines as the top one. And you can scroll through. You have Delta Dental, which is the state's dental provider, et cetera, here, as you can see. But then we also have the P cards. P cards are the credit card P card. I don't know, besides, it's just the purchasing of on a P card that state employees can use to make those payments and transactions. But what do most of them do? Most of them, state employees, you yourselves, if you're purchasing an airline ticket, you're going online, you're entering your credit card information and doing it that way. So if I went ahead and selected that top one, Delta Airlines, there would be very few. What I know is most of them are through P card transactions. So, and I can see that here. What we post on here is the last 5 years full and then the current year. So we have fiscal year 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and then the current year that we're in. Well, you can somewhat see the COVID impact to travel with Delta Airlines, right? See how it was moving along, drops off, and drops off. But use that. The thing with our site, it's powerful that you can switch to different types of graphs quickly. And in this case, in this example, and this type, you're seeing it by state agency. So Idaho State Police has spent the most with Delta Airlines. So, I don't know what, but that's the question. You can say, what are they spending it on? But that's where you can send a public information request, or we can actually dive in, here's all the details. And we could go and say, click on State Police, and there you go. And then all of our data. One thing I'll share with you, there's 52 million rows of data. So it's pretty powerful of how quick that it's slicing and dicing through those 52 million rows. It's roughly about 10 million rows of transactions each fiscal year. So keep on my time check here. So those are just a quick thing. I want to give you the power of just what's there. I know Jordan asked me to talk on some CARES 1 minute. Before I jump to that, let me just show you one other one. Let me come back. And then all the reports that I had out on that previous screen, they're built in here. So if you want to say like the highest paid employee, big guess, right? Coach Avalos now, 1.4. Coach Rice, President Trump, President Green, President Satterley, athletic director. So again, there's the quick report that we've had. All these reports we have pre-built on the side. And then as you saw what I did with Delta Airlines and ISP is you can drill down and go whatever rabbit hole you want to go and spend hours digging and finding. So, well, let me come back here. I was doing a presentation, something very similar to this. And one of the attendees said, hey, can you show me how quickly you can show how much does Boise State have in personnel costs? What's the percentage? And show me in a pie chart. All right, okay. So we come over here. I'm going to click Boise State. There's our total expenditures. I'm going to come down here to filters, and I'm going to switch this over to object. Now I have personnel, operating, and capital outlay. And there it is in a pie chart. And I can see by year, personnel costs, 81% of Boise State's expenses are personnel. And I answered that in 3 clicks. So now that was easy for me because I knew that on stage. You're going to ask me something else like, so how much does health and welfare spend on vaccines in Bannock County? We're getting to that. That's what we're driving to. But I wanted to show you how quickly. The other thing that I would give to you as you're on here that will be helpful is this little link right here up at the top. It says it's a link and it has all of the accounting codes. So you're not all accounting and have that structure. This is our accounting structure, so you know what the codes are to help out if that's something that's beneficial to say, I want to know how much did employees spend on hotels in Idaho. Well, there's a code for that you can quickly search for and get those things. So that link is available for you to do that by clicking on this link here, and it's on all pages. So let me come back out to the home page. And as Lieutenant Governor and Representative Moon wanted me to focus on some of the CARES pieces. So over here on this side, as you remember, the governor formed an advisory committee called the Coronavirus Financial Advisory Committee, which is called CFAC, and I will use that acronym going forward for simplicity. So CFAC met throughout the year last year, and they identified where some of the funds would be appropriated and allocated to. One of the initiatives or programs was a small business grants. So we have here the cash grants for small businesses. This is where I was talking about a narrative that you could quickly show and display the narrative behind the data. So again, on this, just get started. It has the 9,259 businesses that got the small business grant. And again, you can slice and dice this by employee area, by county. Let's say I want to look at, I want to switch it this way. My pie chart, and I want to look at Kootenai. But again, you're having, that quickly I got to Kootenai County and Coeur d'Alene to show what were all the businesses that requested that, and then the dollar amounts. Again, that's also available back out on the home page. There's actually a search function to search, and you can search and pull up by name, employee, business, whatever that may be. The same thing with the rental assistance program. That's all there, all that data and information. 15 million was allocated to the Idaho Housing and Finance entity, and they distributed that and built that program. And so then all of that data, we requested them to give that to us, and then we posted and have that on Transparent Idaho. Same with the Return to Work bonus initiative was included, so we have all of that on there. The main one, though, I want to share with you is this one. It's the local, state, and tribal community support. Within here, we build out, because we're going to say, well, what did CFAC allocate and how did they do that? This is the 1.2 billion that was allocated. And again, these aren't as helpful right here, but it's giving you the amount. But what I want to show is if you click down here in the lower right, opens up the report, and this will give you the allocation of the 1.2 billion that was allocated, state, city, tribes, counties, and how much and to who. So, again, the search here, I could type in and say I want to look at county, if I type. And just that quickly, I'm getting the counties. Counties got 44 million, and then you say, okay, Ada got 11.89 million, diving into all the counties. So it's just a quick way to see what was allocated from the CFAC committee to those organizations. Now this is the allocated amount. This was budgeted or given to those entities. What we're continuing to receive, and I can give a little pat on our back for a second, is I was asking, and I forgot to introduce my chief of staff, Josh Whitworth. If you can give a little wave, Josh. I asked and said, are you aware? We're not aware of any other state at this point that has gotten to this level of detail. I've checked with all of our surrounding ones and that to be able to quickly get to, and we had this available back last May, is when we had this data. And what we track is when those local entities, whether it's the state agencies, cities or counties or local districts, as they put in their reimbursements for CARES money, we actually go through and approve or look at it and justify if it's appropriate expenditure or not. And then we have that through our system, and then we can keep track of it. So as those expenditures are made, then we'll continue to see them on here. So that's what's here on, good deal, on the detail and summary. And so let me just show you, for example, actually if I can come back to the home page. And I'm going to put in, because our other selections for our search, I grew up down in Preston, and that's in Franklin County. So I'm going to type in Franklin County. So there it is. I'm going to hit Franklin County. They have 129 transaction lines of CARES funds. Here's at a summarized level, the dollar amounts and for the year. And if we want to look at the detail, there's the detail. Now, at this point, it's showing it by the employee type, the various on the filter here. But if I switch the filter and say, well, I want to look at it by vendor, who are these payments made to? Search this way. Well, show more and blank, but Rich's, what does that say? Rich's S and Car and Credit, Heart Interactive, IT Specialist, Square Printing, Amazon. So these were the highest payments that my county down in Franklin County, what they expended their money with their CARES dollars. And again, we can see all that information listed here. But if I want to click on that Rich's Cars, they actually had a little note here, I thought, when I ran this morning. It says, Senior Citizen Center had to purchase another van because of the increase of home-delivered meals in Franklin County due to COVID-19. So they purchased another van for their senior Meals on Wheels. But that just gives you a quick little glimpse in there from that standpoint of how quickly I was able to get to a county or an entity and what expenditures they've already had that have come through that our office approved that they made. I know a fun one that this group might like. How about I switch this and I'll type in Amazon. All right, so 1,900 transaction lines that cities, counties, or states used Amazon to make purchases with CARES Act. So there you go. And you say, well, PPE, personal computer hardware, safety supplies, peripheral, there you go. And again, you could dive into the details, what entity, who it was. Time to go, wrap it up. You got a comment, I got to go, so. All right, gavel me down, Madam President. So anyway, my part is, this is all state data, a lot of what we have. There's a bill going through, and I'm just going to give maybe a short little shout out. It's House Bill 73. It's to pull the cities, counties, and local taxing districts and the school districts' data onto Transparent Idaho. Awesome. That's our vision and direction, so thank you. With that, Madam Lieutenant Governor, so I will turn it back to you. Thank you so much.
Brandon.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the offer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. I hope that you all enjoyed that presentation. I wish we had more time to answer questions and go into depth. And I really appreciate our controller's time and attention to be here today, to take your lunch hour, to come and talk to you all. Thank you. And thank you for the excellent job that you do keeping track of how the taxpayer dollars are spent for the state of Idaho. So if you do have questions or want to learn more about this, I encourage you to reach out to the controller's office. He's very responsive and is really enthusiastic about helping people understand things better. Okay, will you be able to stick around a little?
Stick around.
Okay, great.
I might not get my steps in for today, but I'll get them tonight.
Okay, thank you so much, Controller. Thank you. Well, moving along, and thanks for your patience today in the Senate. We went into the hour a little bit, and we're probably going to start doing that more in both the House and the Senate as we go forward. But at this point, I would like to introduce Senator Christy Zito, who is here to discuss with you today the Idaho Small Arms Protection Act. So please help me welcome Senator Christy Zito. She was here. Where did she go? Well, yeah, Representative, did you say she was down there? No. Well, why don't we just go ahead and, okay, so Plan B, we do have Representative Ron Nate. Is he here? I saw him come in. Are you still here? There you are. Well, I'll welcome forward Representative Ron Nate to discuss the grocery tax repeal bill. Welcome, Representative Nate.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor and Representative Moon. It's a pleasure to be here today. It's great to see so many people out here to learn about what's going on in the Idaho Capitol this session. I want to talk about grocery tax repeal. First of all, though, to talk about its the ability to even do it, we need to talk about the state budget a little bit. I got an update this past week from the Division of Financial Management that reports that beyond projections, at the bottom line at the end of this fiscal year, we should have around $662 million left over in the Idaho budget. The plan was to have about $54 million left over just in case. They always work kind of a cushion into our state budget. Just for perspective, our entire state general fund budget is right around $4 billion, just short of $4 billion. This next year is projected to be above $4 billion. So having a surplus, I'll call it a surplus, of $662 million is quite significant. This is comes about largely because tax collections, and by the way, I don't call them tax revenues. It sounds like the government was doing something to earn that from you. I call it tax collections. Tax collections have come in higher than expected, to the tune of over $330 million more than expected. And because of COVID restrictions and stuff, some agencies haven't spent all they needed to. The governor held back some spending. And so on net, we're at $662 million left on the bottom line projected at the end of this year. That's like going to the store and paying $20 when the tab is coming to $16. What do you expect to happen? Do you expect the store to hold on to that $4 and use it for improvements or to clean the floors? No, you expect the change, don't you? The state has collected more of your money than it said it required to run the state's operations. It owes you the change. One way to give you the change is grocery tax repeal. We have passed grocery tax repeal in the past. I don't know if you remember the year 2017. It passed with a supermajority in the House of Representatives, House Bill 67 in 2017. It passed with a supermajority in the Senate. And it went up to the governor's desk close to the last day of the session. It sat on his desk and sat on his desk and sat on his desk. And day 11, after the legislature adjourned, he finally decided to veto the bill. It's interesting, the state constitution gives him 10 days after the legislative session to do a veto. We went to the Supreme Court. 30 legislators signed on to a lawsuit saying that the governor violated the state constitution by trying to do the veto. So we were trying to enjoin the Secretary of State to not certify that bill. Well, the Supreme Court agreed with us in principle, but did not agree with us in terms of consequence. They gave the governor a pass and said, don't do it again. In fact, in the future, we're going to make sure it's 5 days after a legislative session. So here we are, still without grocery tax repeal. It's been proposed the last year, and it got held in committee. I have proposed 2 such grocery tax repeal bills. One that repeals the entire grocery tax credit, another one that repeals only part of it. The chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee has a couple of options dealing with grocery tax repeal that gives different effects on the bottom line. And I just want to give you a few details of this and why it needs to happen. The grocery tax repeal would say that all groceries, as defined by the SNAP federal program, which they use for EBT purchases. So grocery stores already know what groceries qualify under this. It would be very easy to implement. The estimation is about $246 million of less sales tax revenue. However, we have a tax relief fund that's been building up from the internet sales tax. Remember that? You pay an internet sales tax. Did you know that? The only reason it passed in Idaho was the promise that any money generated from it would go back to the taxpayers in the form of tax relief. Here's a great way to do the tax relief. Using $115 million of that tax relief fund would reduce the impact on the general fund balance from this. Also, we raise the revenue sharing so that counties and local governments will not feel the pain of having less sales tax revenue coming to them. All net, we include all that together, and it affects the general fund by about $43 million. Now remember, I said $662 million of extra money on the bottom line. Grocery tax repeal would only affect that by a small fraction, $43 million. There's still plenty of room to do income tax cuts, to do property tax cuts and keep local governments whole, and to do other sales tax cuts. I've heard, I've heard in the hallways around the Capitol that there might be another tax bill coming, but that's all I've heard. We actually have in the chairman's office 2 grocery tax repeal bills. One of them that repeals only part of the grocery tax credit, making sure that no Idahoan would have their taxes go up because of this. Everyone would have a tax cut. On total, it'd be $130 million of tax cut. I know I've thrown a lot of numbers at you, but here's what you need to know. The House Revenue and Taxation Committee has a grocery tax repeal bill that would be worth $130 million of tax relief to Idahoans. There is a lot of money flowing around this Capitol. I've heard of no other firm commitments to tax cuts coming this year. This is the only one that is in draft form in somebody's office ready to go. It needs to happen. I've heard rumors that there might be a tax package with a gas tax increase attached to it. Did you know that you pay 32 cents a gallon for gasoline tax? Do we need to do more of that when there's $662 million on the bottom line? I don't think so. I think it's time Idahoans got tax relief. A lot of hardworking families and businesses have had a hard year. Nonetheless, there's a lot of money on the bottom line because of a lot of relief money flowing into Idaho. It needs to go back to the taxpayers. It's time to do it. Contact your representatives and senators. Contact the chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee, Representative Harris, and let him know that at least we deserve a hearing on that, and our representatives should be able to vote on perhaps the only significant tax relief that's on the table this year. Do I stand for questions now, or? Yes, you do. Okay. Thank you.
We'll take some questions in just a second, but I do want to bring up that if you were listening to Nate Shellman about a week ago or 10 days ago, that the governor had an interview with him, and one of the first questions asked was, if you receive the grocery sales tax exemption bill on your desk, will you sign it? And he said, yes, I would. So I don't know if any of you remembered that, but I'll be sure to cut the clip for next week just in case. So anyway, but if anybody has any questions, yes, so that was Governor Otter for the Supreme Court lawsuit, and Governor Little said he would sign it, so we'll see if he will. Question, please.
That's capital clarity. Thanks for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Whose desk drawer is it sitting in? Because we know that that's a big.
Repeat the question,
Okay.
please.
She's asking in whose drawer is this bill sitting currently? It's in the chairman of the House Revenue and Tax Committee. It's Representative Stephen Harris's drawer.
So he needs emails.
You can get on.
He loves to read email. I'm sure he'll respond.
Roxy?
Thank you for your time. What is this bill called exactly? Or what's the number?
The easy way to do it, it's the grocery tax repeal bill. It does not have a bill number because we are still trying to schedule an introduction hearing. That's the roadblock right now. So grocery tax repeal, everyone knows what you're talking about. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, will you be around until?
Sure.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can you tell us what the stated public reason for this bill remaining in somebody's drawer is?
That's a good question. I'll tell you some of the opposition talking points. And one is that when tourists come through the state, they buy groceries, and we get some of their tourist dollars in the form of taxes. My response to that is, first of all, I don't know tourists that shop in grocery stores that much, but even if they did, I would rather have lower taxes there so they had more money left in their pockets to spend at other Idaho businesses rather than ending up in Idaho Capitol, right? So, good. Thank you. And frankly, some lawmakers would rather have income tax cuts because that affects them more directly than a grocery tax repeal does. I want to help all Idaho families. We all buy groceries, and grocery tax repeal. Idaho is just one of only 5 states that fully taxes its groceries. Does that sound like a conservative red state to you? No. Okay. We can get there, though. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Representative Nate. Will you be here for questions afterwards?
Sure, I'll be.
Thank you. You can hold off on those steps as well. And now, Lieutenant Governor will introduce our next speaker, please.
Thank you, Representative Moon and Representative Nate, and she's back. So please help me welcome Senator Christy Zito, who's been a very strong advocate for our Second Amendment right. Thanks for being here today.
Well, thank you for having me here today, and I'll explain briefly where I was. I thought I followed Representative Nate. That's kind of how the schedule read. So we were on the floor longer than I thought we would be in session, and I wanted to make sure that I don't make any mistakes and I present this exactly as it should be. So I was listening to a video so I could be sure and answer questions and get it right. It was only 7 minutes, and we'll talk about that later. But I am more than pleased and more than happy to announce the Idaho Small Arms Protection Act. This will be in addition to the Idaho Sanctuary State Acts that have been passed previously in 2010 and 2014. So what we've done is Alexandria Kincaid has written this bill for us, and it takes a different approach, maybe something different than any other state in the country has done. And what we're going to do is we are going to protect the rights of Idaho citizens to be able to have the arms that are necessary for them to protect themselves and hunt and do the things that Idahoans do. So we can't, in the one that we had before, we tried to nullify federal law, and we can't do that. And there have been some court cases, and one that actually went to the Supreme Court, that let us know that we can't just nullify federal law, okay? Now, we look at it and we say, well, you know, in Oregon and Washington, they're making it so that you can have illegal drugs, and that's okay. But the difference is that the feds are going to turn their backs on law like that, but they are not going to turn their backs on gun control or on the ability to have and keep arms. So Alexandria has crafted this so that we can protect that right. And how that's going to work is, for example, if the ATF comes into your county and they tell your sheriff that they're going to go to Christy Zito's house and they're going to take her firearms, the sheriff will say no. He's going to stand up to that. Or your PD, or a legislator, or whatever government official is going to stand up to them. And so we're going to offer civil and criminal immunity for that act by our elected officials. And then in this legislation, we also direct the Attorney General that he will defend and protect if that ever happens. And then if the Attorney General refuses to, then the legislature has the ability to choose a member of the legislature to be able to take that stand and then provide funds so that that can be defended in court. So that's kind of basically what we're going to do. And I've asked Greg Pruitt to be here with me today, and if he'll come up, because I think the important thing now is that we answer questions, because I don't want there to be any misconceptions. I don't want you to go out and say, well, gee, we've got this in place now, I'm going to go build my own suppressor and no one can do anything about it. That's not what this is about. This is about directing our state and making it possible for our sheriffs and our law enforcement officials to not allow the feds to come in on an unconstitutional law or unconstitutional anything.
Senator Zito, as you take questions, will you just restate the question that's asked, because sometimes that's not heard on a video?
Yes, yep, we can do that.
Yeah, just, can I add real quick?
Yep.
Can you hear me? I don't want to stand next to you.
That's because it makes me look even shorter than I am.
Down there, it was looking pretty good though, right? So, so our goal, and Alexandria's goal was all these items that they want to ban, right? They want to ban magazines, they want to ban reloading ammunition and AR-15s and AK-47s, all these small arms that they always want to go after. We've basically said we have to have those here in Idaho for our own protection. And so you aren't allowed to ban those things. And then we're going to, like she mentioned, we'll give immunity to anybody within the government at any level who is refusing to help the federal government enforce those laws. Part of the issue that Alexandria, and I just came from her office, said with the old laws is that citizens were building suppressors here in Idaho and thinking, oh, now I can just go ahead and take that suppressor and do whatever I want with it without that federal tax stamp. Well, guess what? They're going to prison, okay? While I agree with what the old law does, we're not at the point where the marijuana people are, where all of these states have gathered together and just said, forget it, we're not going to do it anymore. Until we get to that point, you are risking going to prison doing some of that stuff. And so she said this is a unique opportunity and a unique way that we are trying to protect these small arms here in Idaho by saying we have to have them for self-defense. So she mentioned it's a 10th Amendment argument, it's in a Second Amendment argument, that if it ever goes to court, that's what we'll be arguing in court. So anyway, any questions? Oh boy, okay.
I probably should know the answer. I'm sorry I don't, but it's a jurisdictional one. So the sheriff wants to defend your right, that's great. What if you live in a place where there's a city and the city police may, for whatever reason, not really feel that way? What happens then?
Sorry, do you want
Okay,
to restate the question?
the question was about jurisdiction, and so for instance, if the sheriff wants to defend you on that, but the city police does not, my sheriff and I had this discussion just the other day. He went to the city police chief and told him if he chose not to defend the Second Amendment, that he would take his jurisdiction back from him. That's what my sheriff told.
I mean, the bottom line is we're definitely in a place where I've never seen so much angst amongst gun owners. And they're really looking out to the legislature, to their local law enforcement saying, when an AR or a mag ban comes through Congress, because it's coming, what are you going to do? Because Idahoans are not going to give up their guns. That's not something that's going to happen. So what is your local police and all of them going to do? And that's why you're seeing a lot of cities across Idaho right now are passing these same sanctuaries, telling their local police departments, you will not enforce this stuff when it comes, okay? Either from the state legislature, which is not going to come from here, or from the federal government. And I think that's a good movement to keep going, is to have your local cities pushing these same types of resolutions.
I do too. I had someone ask me the other day, well, if the state passes this, do we really need to have sanctuary counties and sanctuary cities? And I think that the stronger and the thicker that wall is, that the better off it'll be. The more we make that statement that this is Idaho and this is what it's going to do, we have our guns to defend ourselves and we won't give that up. Because it's not only a 10th Amendment issue, but I believe it's in the 5th and the 9th and the 14th Amendment as well. So if it ever goes to court, we have several different fronts we can defend it on.
There's a lot of
Right.
hands.
Thank you, Senator. So I'm appreciative of the effort, and I'm glad to hear it. So it sounds like your sheriff's on board. But I think just for clarification, it does not require a sheriff or a police chief to do this. It enables them to do it, correct? And so that if there is an act against a citizen by the federal government, then there are steps in this bill that would allow us to pursue a solution.
Yeah, so, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead. You're fine.
Yeah,
I'm
so
sorry.
what it's doing with the law enforcement is we're giving them civil and criminal immunity. So if in your city, if you live in a more unfriendly
Liberal.
area for the Second Amendment, Boise, and, and they refuse to help, right? And some citizen says, well, now I'm going to go sue the police, or I'm going to try and sue the sheriff, or I'm going to try and sue my legislators who helped pass this or whatever. We're making sure that they all have immunity from that either civil or criminal prosecution for refusing to help the feds, if that makes sense. So it's not requiring the sheriff to have to go and
Right.
intervene. Hopefully your sheriff does go and intervene, that's his job. I don't know, there's too many.
Start on one side, mark
Yeah,
across.
sorry. Go ahead.
So first, let me say I applaud and I thank you for standing up for our rights. I really do. But my point is that the bill, the draconian sack the Second Amendment bill that was proposed by that representative from Texas, also talked about a registration system.
Correct.
You haven't mentioned that, but, I don't really think I'm going to comply with the registration. I don't really have much use for a registration system.
Idaho's, sorry, and I'm just going to, so you don't, aren't confused, but Idaho's constitution already prohibits that registration. And yeah, nobody's going to register here anyway. But you're right.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little confused. So the immunity would be for the sheriff or the elected official. So if federal law outlaws an AR, so a federal official shows up on my doorstep, how do we?
What do you do? How do you
I'm just trying
interact?
to figure out how that's protecting this.
First,
I'm sorry.
the sheriff's permission.
I'm all for it, but I don't understand.
Restate her question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So what she's asking is, say that the feds come and show up on her doorstep to take her AR. Is the protection for her, or is the protection for the sheriff? We'll use the sheriff, for example, in her county if he intervenes. So the protection would be for the sheriff if he intervenes.
The federal official come in spite of the sheriff saying, I don't want you to do that.
Technically, the way I understand it, and you correct me if I'm wrong, when a federal agent comes into a local jurisdiction, I believe they have to ask permission.
Yeah, I don't have it. I don't have a
That-
lawful
That's the
answer.
way I understand
I
it.
don't
Now,
think that's
I
fair.
could be wrong, but that's
So-
the way it was explained to me. Is that the way you understand it?
No, I don't think that's accurate, but, so really, I mean, if they pass a federal law and the federal government comes and arrests you for having an AR and you are not a prohibited person, and we have
Oh,
that
we
in
have
here
that
to
in there
where
too.
you're not a convicted felon and we're going, okay, now we're going to bat for you because you were already breaking a law when you shouldn't have. They're probably, yeah, probably. Yep.
Federal
So our
agents,
goal
yeah.
would then be to, okay, you're violating one of the laws that we have now set up. It's time for us to go and say, hey, you're taking this person to court who is prohibited, but they were following our law, and so that's, again, this is something that's unique and different, and we're trying to get to the point where it's a 10th Amendment issue, right? We are trying to say, this is our laws on our land here in Idaho, and this person hasn't done anything wrong. So it's not a guaranteed protection. If they pass a law that says you can't have an AR, guess what? That is going to be the federal law, okay? And we're coming to a head. All the laws that were passed in 2010 and 2014 that were like, yeah, nullify it all, guess what? We're about to test how that's really going to go down. So anyway, okay.
And I'll
We could
check
be
on
here
that
for a
and make
while.
sure, one way or the other.
Okay. Sorry, we'll do this one first. There you go.
Mine's short. So if the federal government does come in, does that enable the sheriff to arrest them or detain the federal people that come in to try to take the guns, or it just stops that action?
No, so you're asking if this specific legislation does that. No, this is not going to do, I mean, you better start talking to your sheriff right now and finding out, is he going to be the guy that's going to stop what is coming? Because this won't do that.
But he
No.
can't, the sheriff can't arrest the federal people.
Sorry, I think Dorothy,
Okay.
do we?
No, that's okay. Go ahead, finish your question. I'm sorry.
That was just it. I want to know if the sheriff,
There's gonna
if
be
they
a
do
ton,
come
so
in
we should
to
practice
take,
this.
can the sheriff arrest the federal?
You just want to do more after
Yeah.
out there. Yeah.
But can you take this lady in the gray sweater right here? I see
I'm
her
sorry.
for 10 minutes.
bill number and who we're supposed to contact,
Yep.
supposed to act.
Well, right now, it's a routing slip. We don't have a bill number yet. It will go through the Senate State Affairs and that Senator Patty Ann Lodge. And it probably would be a good idea to encourage her to
Give it a hearing.
give it a hearing.
Should we refer to it by the RS number or just as the, what would be the name?
I mean, probably the small arms protection.
Yeah, I
Act
would
might
do
be easier
smaller.
to
That might be
remember.
easier.
Because that RS number is only going to have a very limited
Right.
time, and then it's a bill number.
Right, as soon as it gets a print hearing, it'll have a bill number, and we can get that out to you. Yes.
Okay, this lady right here, you've also had your arm up for quite a while. Please.
Okay, sorry.
I want to know, so what if we have a UN-friendly sheriff or police people, and the federal government comes in and does a no-knock search and comes into your house? Is it going to protect the person if they kill a federal officer or shoot them?
No, I'm not going down that road, but, yeah, that's not, no, this legislation, which is what we're talking about, does not deal with any of that kind of stuff. It's very specific.
Because that's where it usually happens, is that they come in and they have this no-knock, and they shoot the person that has the gun.
Yeah, yeah, this does not specifically deal with that question.
Okay, let's take some questions afterwards. They're going to be around, I hope.
Yeah.
Yes, and thank you for the information. Let's get behind this bill. You know, thank you so much, Senator Zito and Greg Pruitt with Second Amendment Alliance. I'd like to also share that there's another bill that's just come up. I know there's been a lot of concern on social media and calls and emails to the legislators about the executive orders coming from President Biden. And if you've noticed, there's some other states. Nebraska is one of them that we're modeling. And Representative Chad Christensen is bringing forward a bill which would allow the legislature, in our case, to not go along with an executive order. In other states, if you've read them, they're using their attorney general. We prefer to use the legislature in our state, okay? So watch for that one to come forward, and then Lieutenant Governor will mention another exciting bill that's just gone from the House to the Senate.
Thank you, Representative Moon. Actually, I wanted to just give you an update on its House Concurrent Resolution number 2, which lifted all COVID restrictions for gathering, especially sports events. So it passed the House with full support, and it was read across the Senate floor, and has been assigned to the Senate State Affairs Committee. So now you can address that with the chair of the Senate State Affairs Committee. We're more than halfway through on that important piece of legislation, and I'm sure that the people in Idaho and our kids especially would appreciate your support on that. Okay, so well, we're at the 1 o'clock hour. Now, last week I mentioned an exciting announcement that was going to happen, and what that's going to be, it's not going to be next week, but it'll be the week after that. The exciting news is that some of you, unbeknownst to yourselves yet, are going to be elected to serve in the Idaho legislature. And what we want to do is we want to conduct a mock legislative committee, because we're going back to the purpose of what this is really supposed to be all about, is to help you understand the process, be involved. So some of you will be sitting in these chairs, and there's going to be a bill that will be presented to you. And once we find out who is going to be representing the legislature, then you'll know what that bill is, and then we'll have presenters come, and you'll have the opportunity to learn what that's like to participate in the legislative process, and then we'll also have public testimony on the bill. So we're planning on that, taking up the 1 full hour on that, and it is a really interesting subject that we have selected, but we'll have that announced later as well. So with that, just thank you again. Oh, and before we leave, members of the legislature that are here today, please stand so that you can be recognized. Thank you to all of you, the legislators, and to the citizen members for being here today and for your interest. And you all have a great day. Thanks a lot.